Doyen stood in front of the mirror in his small cabin aboard the Horizon's Promise. He adjusted his diplomatic uniform for the 5th time that morning. His hands were shaking slightly, and he noticed it with some embarrassment. He was supposed to be calm, professional, ready for the most important meeting of his entire career. "You look fine," Hana said from the doorway. His sister leaned against the frame with her arms crossed, watching him with amusement. She was the head scientist on this mission, and unlike him, she seemed completely relaxed. "I look nervous," Doyen replied, tugging at his collar again. "You are nervous. That's normal." Hana walked into the room and gently moved his hands away from his uniform. "Stop fidgeting. You're going to wrinkle it." Doyen took a deep breath and nodded. Through the small window of his cabin, he could see the Veltheran homeworld growing larger. The planet was beautiful, covered in silver cities that gleamed like jewels against blue oceans. The Veltharans had been traveling through space for thousands of years before humans even invented the wheel. They were powerful, ancient, and sophisticated in ways humanity could barely understand, and they thought humans were primitive. "Run through it one more time," Doyen said, sitting down on his bed. "I need to make sure I don't mess this up." Hana pulled up a chair and sat across from him. Her expression turned serious. The Veltharans value emotional control above everything else. Showing too much emotion is considered childish and uncivilized. When you speak to them, keep your voice level. Don't smile too much. Don't laugh. And whatever you do, never comment on someone's physical appearance. "Never comment on appearance," Doyen repeated. "Why is that so important?" "Because in their culture, noticing how someone looks is shallow and rude. They believe that focusing on physical traits shows you can't see the deeper qualities of a person. It's one of their biggest taboos." Hana leaned forward. "If you tell someone they look nice, it's like insulting them. You're basically saying that's all they're worth." Doyen nodded slowly. It seemed strange to him, but he understood. Different cultures had different rules. That was why they needed this alliance. Humanity needed access to the trade routes that passed through Veltheran space. Without them, human colonies on the Outer Rim would struggle to survive. This meeting could change everything for his people. "What about Princess Liven?" he asked. "What do I need to know about her?" "She's the crown princess. Next in line for the throne. Highly educated. Trained in diplomacy since childhood. She speaks 15 languages perfectly. She's never lost a negotiation." Hana paused. "And Doyen? She's the one who will decide if humanity is worth their time. Not the Emperor. Not the Council. Her. No pressure then," Doyen said with a weak smile. Hana didn't smile back. "I'm serious. The Veltharans trust her judgment completely. If she says no to this alliance, it's over. We pack up and go home, and millions of people suffer." The weight of it settled on Doyen's shoulders like a physical thing. He had trained for years to become a diplomat. He had studied alien cultures, learned to negotiate, practiced keeping his emotions hidden when necessary. But this was different. This was real. This mattered more than anything he had ever done. A chime sounded through the ship's communication system. Captain Jiho's voice came through clearly. "All diplomatic personnel report to the transport bay. We dock with the Veltharan Palace vessel in 30 minutes. Doyen stood up. His legs felt unsteady, but he forced himself to walk normally. Hana stood with him and put a hand on his shoulder. "You can do this," she said quietly. "Just remember the rules. Stay calm, stay formal. Don't be too human." "Don't be too human," Doyen repeated. The phrase felt strange in his mouth. They walked together through the corridors of the Horizon's Promise. Other members of the diplomatic team were heading toward the transport bay as well. Doyen recognized Minji, the communications specialist, and Jiho, who had left the bridge to accompany them. Jiho was not just the ship's security officer. He was also Doyen's closest friend. "Ready for this?" Jiho asked, falling into step beside him. "No," Doyen admitted. "Good. That means you're taking it seriously." Jiho's expression was hard to read, but there was concern in his eyes. "Just stick to the protocol. These Veltharans are stiff and formal, but they're fair. Show them respect and they'll show it back." The transport bay was busy with activity. Engineers were running final checks on the shuttle that would carry them to the Veltharan vessel. Doyen could see it through the bay windows now, hanging in space like a massive crystal sculpture. The palace ship was 10 times the size of the Horizon's Promise, and it looked like a work of art. Every surface was smooth and perfectly designed. Lights glowed from within, soft and elegant. "It's beautiful," Minji whispered beside him. "It's intimidating," Doyen corrected. They boarded the shuttle in silence. Doyen took a seat near the window and watched as they detached from the horizon's promise. The small craft moved smoothly through the vacuum of space, approaching the Veltharan Palace ship. As they got closer, Doyen could see details he had missed before. The ship wasn't just beautiful. It was perfect. There were no visible seams, no rough edges, no signs of wear. It looked like something that had been grown rather than built. The shuttle passed through an energy barrier and entered a landing bay that was larger than most buildings on Earth. Other ships were docked there, all of them sleek and elegant. Their shuttle looked crude and boxy by comparison. "Here we go," Hana murmured. The shuttle touched down with barely a sound. The doors opened, and Doyen stepped out into the Veltharan Palace ship for the first time. The air was cool and smelled faintly of something he couldn't identify, something clean and sharp. The landing bay was quiet except for the soft hum of technology. A group of Veltharans waited for them at the base of the shuttle ramp. They were tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. They wore flowing robes in shades of silver and blue. Their faces were calm and expressionless. One of them stepped forward. "Welcome," he said in perfect English. His voice was smooth and emotionless. "I am Ambassador Kreeth. On behalf of the Veltharan Empire, we greet you." Doyen bowed slightly the way Hana had taught him. "Thank you for receiving us, Ambassador. It is an honor to be here. The princess will meet you in the reception hall. Follow me." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Everything was clean and elegant and perfect. Doyen tried to memorize every detail, but it was overwhelming. The Veltharans moved silently, their robes flowing behind them like water. Finally, they reached a set of massive doors. Ambassador Kreeth turned to face the human delegation. "Beyond these doors is the reception hall. The princess waits inside. Remember that you are guests here. Behave accordingly." The doors opened and Doyen's breath caught in his throat. The reception hall was enormous, with ceilings so high they seemed to disappear into light. Hundreds of Veltharans stood in perfect rows, all watching silently. And at the far end of the hall, standing on a raised platform, was Princess Livin. Doyen started walking forward. His heart was pounding. This was it. This was the moment that would determine humanity's future. He just had to remember the rules. Stay calm, stay formal. Don't be too human. He could do this. Doyen walked across the reception hall with measured steps. He could feel hundreds of eyes watching him. The Veltharans stood perfectly still, their faces showing nothing. The silence was so complete that he could hear his own footsteps echoing against the polished floor. Hana walked beside him, along with Jiho and Minji. They had practiced this approach a dozen times on the ship. Walk steadily. Keep your head up, but not too high. Show confidence, but not arrogance. Every movement mattered. Princess Livin stood waiting on the platform. As Doyen got closer, he could see her more clearly. She wore robes of deep blue that seemed to shift color as she moved. Her hair was long and dark, pulled back in an elegant style. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and her posture was absolutely perfect. Doyen reminded himself to breathe. He had prepared for this moment. He knew what to say. He knew how to act. He just needed to follow the protocol. They reached the base of the platform and stopped. Doyen bowed, holding the position for exactly 3 seconds as Hana had instructed. When he straightened, he looked up at Princess Livin for the first time. Their eyes met. Everything Doyen had prepared flew out of his mind like birds startled by a sudden noise. He had expected her to be regal and formal. He had expected her to be impressive in the way powerful people always were. He had not expected this. She was not just beautiful in the way the palace ship was beautiful, all perfect lines and elegant design. There was something else, something in her eyes that was alive and intelligent and curious. She looked at him not with the cold indifference of the other Veltharans, but with genuine attention. Like she was trying to understand him. Like she actually wanted to know who he was. Doyen opened his mouth to speak the formal greeting he had memorized. The words were supposed to be, "Your Highness, on behalf of humanity, I bring greetings and hopes for friendship between our peoples." Instead, what came out was, "Your Highness, you're so lovely I can't speak." The words seemed to hang in the air. Doyen heard them with growing horror. Had he really just said that? Had those words actually come out of his mouth? The entire hall went silent. It had been quiet before, but this was different. This was the silence of shock. The silence of something terrible happening. Princess Liven's eyes went wide. Her hands, which had been clasped calmly in front of her, separated slightly. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. She just stood there, frozen, staring at him. Doyun could feel Hana's hand suddenly grip his arm. Her fingers dug into his sleeve so hard it hurt. He could sense Jiho moving slightly, probably reaching for the weapon he carried. Minji made a small sound that might have been a gasp. Ambassador Kreeth stepped forward, his face showing emotion for the first time. He looked horrified. "What did you just say?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. Doyun tried to think of something to fix this. An explanation, an apology, anything, but his mind was blank. All he could do was look at Princess Liven, who was still standing frozen on the platform. Doyun started, but he didn't know how to finish. Hana leaned close and whispered frantically, "Translation error. Say it was a translation error." But Doyun knew that wouldn't work. The Veltharans had perfect translation technology. They knew exactly what he had said. There was no way to pretend otherwise. Princess Liven finally moved. She took a small step backward, as if she needed to put distance between herself and Doyun. Her face, which had been so calm and composed, now showed confusion and something else, something Doyun couldn't quite identify. Ambassador Kreeth turned to face the princess. "Your Highness, I apologize for this barbaric display. The human clearly does not understand proper diplomatic conduct." "He understands," Princess Liven said quietly. Her voice was soft but clear. He knew the protocol. He chose to ignore it. Doyun wanted to argue that he hadn't chosen anything. The words had just come out, but he stayed silent. What could he say? That seeing her had made him forget everything he knew? That would only make things worse. Jiho stepped forward slightly, positioning himself between Doyun and the Veltharans. It was a subtle movement, but everyone noticed. Several Veltharan guards moved in response, their hands going to weapons Doyun hadn't even realized they carried. "Everyone stay calm," Minji said, her voice tight with tension. "There's no need for this to escalate." Ambassador Kreeth looked at the human delegation with cold anger. "You come to our home requesting our help and you insult the crown princess in front of the entire court. You show the exact barbarism we expected from your species." "I didn't mean to insult her," Doyun said, finding his voice at last. "I meant—" "We know what you meant," Ambassador Kreeth interrupted. "You reduced Her Highness to her physical appearance. You showed that you cannot see beyond the surface. You proved that humans are exactly what we thought. Primitive creatures ruled by base instincts." The words stung because part of Doyun knew they were right. He had broken the most important rule. He had done the one thing Hana had specifically warned him not to do. And he had done it in the worst possible way in front of everyone who mattered. But another part of him, a stubborn part, thought the rule was wrong. What was primitive about honesty? What was barbaric about expressing genuine feeling? He had seen Princess Liven and been moved by her presence. Was that really such a terrible thing? Princess Liven was still watching him. Her initial shock had faded, replaced by something more complex. She looked curious and confused and perhaps even a little angry, but she didn't look away. "Ambassador Kreeth," she said finally, "I will handle this matter personally." "Your Highness, there is nothing to handle. The human delegation should be removed immediately. The alliance talks are over." "No," Princess Liven said firmly. The single word carried absolute authority. "I said I will handle this. Everyone leave us." A murmur ran through the assembled Veltharans. Ambassador Kreeth looked shocked. "Your Highness, that would be highly inappropriate. You cannot be left alone with these people." "Are you questioning my judgment, Ambassador?" Kreeth bowed his head quickly. "Of course not, Your Highness. But for your safety, Commander Sylph will remain with me. The rest of you will leave." It was not a request. It was an order. The Veltharans began filing out of the reception hall in orderly lines. Ambassador Kreeth looked like he wanted to argue more, but he simply bowed and left with the others. Hana grabbed Doyun's arm again. "We should go too," she whispered urgently. "The human delegation stays," Princess Liven said. "I want to understand what just happened." Within minutes, the enormous hall was empty except for Princess Liven, Commander Sylph standing guard nearby, and the 4 humans. The silence was heavy and uncomfortable. Princess Levin descended from the platform, moving with fluid grace. She stopped a few meters away from Doyen, studying him carefully. You knew the protocol, she said. It was not a question. Yes, Your Highness. You knew that commenting on physical appearance is forbidden in our culture. Yes, Your Highness. Then why did you say it? Doyen met her eyes. He was already in trouble. He had already ruined everything. What did he have to lose by being honest? Because it was true, he said simply. I looked at you and that was the first thought in my mind. I'm sorry if it offended you. I'm sorry if it violated your customs. But I'm not sorry that I said something true. Princess Levin tilted her head slightly. Truth, she repeated as if testing the word. You value truth over propriety? In my culture, yes. We believe that honest feelings are important. That expressing them is a strength, not a weakness. And you felt it was appropriate to express this feeling to me? Someone you just met? In front of my entire court? Doyen hesitated. When she put it that way, it did sound wrong. But he couldn't take it back now. I didn't plan to say it, Your Highness. But yes, I suppose I did feel it was appropriate. Or at least I felt it was honest. Princess Levin was quiet for a long moment. She looked at him with those intelligent, curious eyes. And Doyen had the strange feeling that she was seeing something in him that surprised her. You have destroyed any chance of an alliance, she said finally. You understand that, don't you? Yes, Your Highness. Millions of your people will suffer because of what you said today. Yes, Your Highness. And yet you stand there and tell me you're not sorry. Doyen took a breath. I'm sorry for the consequences. I'm sorry for the people who will be hurt. But I'm not sorry for being honest with you. Princess Levin studied him for another long moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room, including Commander Sylph. She smiled. It was a small smile, barely there. But it was real. Interesting, she said softly. Come with me. We have much to discuss. The private chamber Princess Levin led them to was smaller than the reception hall, but no less impressive. Large windows showed the stars outside, and comfortable seating was arranged in a circle. It felt more intimate, more like a real room where people might actually talk. Commander Sylph stood by the door, her hand never far from her weapon. She watched the humans with clear suspicion, especially Jiho, who had positioned himself protectively near Doyen. Princess Levin sat in one of the chairs and gestured for the others to sit as well. Doyen lowered himself carefully into a seat across from her. Hana sat beside him, her face tight with worry. Minji and Jiho took seats on either side, creating a barrier between Doyen and the door. So, Princess Levin said, looking directly at Doyen. Explain your culture to me. Help me understand why you thought your behavior was acceptable. Doyen glanced at Hana, who gave him a tiny nod. She was telling him to be careful, to think before he spoke. But what was the point of being careful now? He had already destroyed everything. In human culture, Doyen began slowly, we believe that emotions are important. We don't think feeling things makes us weak or primitive. We think it makes us alive. And so you express every feeling that crosses your mind? Princess Levin asked. There was no mockery in her voice, only curiosity. No, not every feeling. But important ones, yes. When something moves us, when we feel something strongly, we believe it should be acknowledged. Even if that feeling is about someone's appearance? Doyen paused, choosing his words carefully. Your Highness, when I said you were lovely, I wasn't just talking about how you look. I was talking about the whole impression you made. Your bearing, your presence, the intelligence I could see in your eyes, all of it together. Princess Levin leaned back in her chair. But you used the word lovely, which specifically refers to physical beauty. In our language, it can mean more than that. It can mean someone who moves you, who affects you in a deep way. Doyen met her eyes. I looked at you and I felt something. Wonder, maybe. Respect, admiration. I tried to express all of that in one sentence, and those were the words that came out. Even though you knew it would offend me, I didn't think about that in the moment. I just spoke. Princess Levin was quiet for a moment, studying him. That is what my people find most disturbing about humans, she said finally. You do things without thinking. You act on impulse. It seems chaotic and dangerous to us. Hana leaned forward. Your Highness, if I may speak. Princess Levin nodded. Humans do think, Hana said. We plan and strategize just like any other species. But we also value spontaneity and genuine emotion. We believe that not everything needs to be calculated. Sometimes the unplanned moments are the most honest ones. And honesty is more important than propriety? Princess Liven asked. Often, yes, Hana admitted. Princess Liven turned her attention back to Doyen. In my culture, we are taught from childhood to control our emotions, to master them. We believe that feelings are obstacles to clear thinking, that they cloud judgment and lead to poor decisions. Do you believe that? Doyen asked before he could stop himself. What I believe is irrelevant. I am the crown princess. I must uphold our values. But you're curious, Doyen said. I can see it. You're wondering what it would be like to just say what you feel without worrying about all the rules. Commander Sylph stirred by the door. You presume too much, human. But Princess Liven held up a hand. No, Commander. He's not wrong. She looked at Doyen with something that might have been respect. I am curious. In all my years of diplomatic training, I have never met anyone who said exactly what they thought the way you did. It was shocking, but it was also... She paused, searching for the word. Refreshing. Doyen felt a small spark of hope. Maybe he hadn't completely destroyed everything after all. The door to the chamber suddenly opened. Ambassador Kreeth strode in, his face set in hard lines. Your Highness, I must speak with you immediately. Ambassador Kreeth, this is a private meeting. With all respect, Your Highness, this matter cannot wait. Kreeth glared at the humans. The council has convened. They are demanding that the human delegation be sent away immediately. There is talk of forbidding any future contact with their species. Princess Liven stood slowly. The council does not make decisions about who I meet with. The council represents the will of our people, Your Highness, and our people are outraged by what happened in the reception hall. Kreeth's voice was cold with anger. This human has shown us exactly what we feared. Humans are ruled by base instincts. They cannot control themselves. They are not worthy of an alliance with the Veltheran Empire. That's not fair, Doyen said, standing as well. You're judging all of humanity based on one mistake by one person. A mistake you admit to making, Kreeth shot back. And you show no real remorse. You stand there defending your barbaric behavior. It wasn't barbaric, to be honest. It was barbaric to reduce the crown princess to an object of physical desire in front of her entire court. That's not what I did, Doyen said, his voice rising. He could feel his control slipping. I expressed genuine feeling. There's a difference. There is no difference, Kreeth said flatly. Your genuine feeling revealed exactly what you are. A primitive creature who cannot rise above base instincts. Jiho stepped forward, his jaw tight. Watch your words, Ambassador. Or what? Kreeth turned his cold gaze on Jiho. You will threaten me? Use violence? That would only prove my point. Everyone, calm down, Minji said, her voice cutting through the tension. This isn't helping anyone. Princess Liven moved between Kreeth and the humans. Ambassador, you will leave us now. Your Highness, now. Kreeth's face showed his anger, but he bowed stiffly. As you wish, Your Highness. But the council will not be put off. They demand a response. He turned and left, the door closing behind him with a solid thud. Princess Liven turned back to the humans. The moment of curiosity was gone from her face, replaced by careful neutrality. He is right about one thing. The council is very upset. Many of them already oppose this alliance. Your actions today have given them the excuse they needed to end it. I'm sorry, Doyen said quietly. I truly am. I never meant to cause this much trouble. Your intentions don't matter. Only the consequences. Princess Liven walked to the window and looked out at the stars. My people have been civilized for thousands of years. We built an empire spanning hundreds of systems. We did this through discipline and careful thought, not through impulsive emotion. But you've also lost something, Hana said softly. Haven't you? Princess Liven turned to look at her. What do you mean? Your Highness, my brother and I spent months studying your culture before we came here. We read your history, your ancient texts, your poetry and art from thousands of years ago. Hana stood and walked closer to the princess. Your people weren't always like this. Once you created art that was full of passion. You wrote poetry about love and loss and joy, but somewhere along the way you stopped. You decided that emotions were weaknesses and you suppressed them. Princess Liven's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. That was our choice. We evolved beyond such primitive needs, or you buried them, Hana said gently. There's a difference. For a long moment, Princess Liven said nothing. Then she turned back to the window. Even if what you say is true, it changes nothing. I cannot undo thousands of years of cultural development because one human made me feel... She stopped abruptly. Made you feel what? Doyen asked. Princess Liven didn't answer. She kept staring out at the stars, her back to them. Finally she spoke. You should return to your ship. I will think about what to tell the council. Will you tell them to send us away? Doyen asked. I don't know yet. It wasn't much, but it was something. It meant she was still considering options, that the alliance might not be completely dead. Thank you for listening to us, Your Highness, Doyen said. Princess Liven glanced back at him. I haven't decided to help you. I know. But you listened. That means something. Another flicker of something in her eyes. Then she turned away again. Commander Sylph will escort you back to your shuttle. They had no choice but to leave. As they walked through the corridors of the palace ship, Hana grabbed Doyen's arm. What were you thinking in there? She hissed. You're supposed to be fixing this, not making it worse. I was being honest, Doyen said. Honest is going to get us all sent home in disgrace. Jiho put a hand on Hana's shoulder. He did the right thing. The princess responded to honesty. She's curious about us now. That's more than we had before. Before we had a chance at an alliance, Hana said bitterly. Now we have nothing. But as they boarded the shuttle and returned to the Horizon's promise, Doyen kept thinking about the look in Princess Liven's eyes. The curiosity, the wonder, the tiny smile she had given him. Maybe they had more than nothing after all. Maybe they had the beginning of something real. 3 days passed with no word from the Veltheran palace ship. Doyen spent most of his time in his cabin, waiting and worrying. The Horizon's promise stayed in orbit around the Veltheran homeworld, but no messages came, no invitations, nothing. Hana threw herself into her research, studying everything she could find about Veltheran history. Jiho maintained security protocols and kept the crew ready for anything. Minji monitored all communication channels, hoping for some signal that their mission wasn't completely over. On the 4th day, a message finally arrived. Princess Liven requests the presence of diplomat Doyen for cultural briefings. Minji read from her console, her eyes wide with surprise. Just Doyen, no one else. It's a trap, Jiho said immediately. They're going to arrest him or worse. They don't need to trick us for that, Hana pointed out. We're in their space. They could arrest all of us whenever they want. Doyen stood up. I'm going. At least let me come with you, Jiho insisted. The message specifically says I should come alone. Then this is definitely a trap. Maybe, Doyen admitted. But it's also the first communication we've had in 4 days. If there's even a small chance this can help the alliance, I have to take it. Hana looked worried but nodded. Be careful. And for the love of everything, think before you speak this time. Doyen took the shuttle back to the palace ship. This time there was no formal reception. A silent Veltheran guard met him at the landing bay and led him through the corridors. They walked for a long time, passing through sections of the ship Doyen hadn't seen before. These areas were quieter, more private. Finally, they reached a door that opened into a library. The room was filled with books and data crystals, organized on shelves that stretched toward the high ceiling. Comfortable chairs were scattered throughout. It looked like a place meant for thinking and reading, not formal meetings. Princess Liven stood by one of the windows, her back to him. She wore simpler robes today. In soft gray instead of royal blue, she looked less like a crown princess and more like a person. Thank you for coming, she said without turning around. Thank you for inviting me, Your Highness. You may call me Liven when we are alone. The formality becomes tiresome. Doyen wasn't sure what to say to that. It seemed like a test somehow. Liven turned to face him. I have been thinking about what you said. About emotions and honesty. I want to understand your culture better. Why? Because I am curious. Is that not reason enough? Doyen smiled slightly. Yes, it is. Liven gestured to the chairs. Sit, we have much to discuss. They sat across from each other just as they had in the private chamber days before. But this time the atmosphere was different. Less tense. More open. Tell me about human art, Liven said. Hana mentioned poetry. What purpose does it serve? Doyen thought about how to answer. Poetry is a way of expressing feelings that normal language can't capture. It uses rhythm and imagery to make people feel things. But why is making people feel things important? Because shared feelings connect us. When I read a poem about loss, and I've experienced loss, I know I'm not alone. Someone else understands. Liven considered this. In our culture, we believe that individual experiences are just that. Individual. Trying to share them is futile. But that makes everyone isolated, Doyen said. If you never share what you feel, how do you really know each other? We know each other through actions and accomplishments. Through what we do, not what we feel. What if what you feel drives what you do? Liven was quiet for a moment. That is the concern, yes. If emotions drive actions, then actions become unpredictable and chaotic. Or passionate and meaningful, Doyen countered gently. Liven tilted her head, studying him. Show me an example. This human poetry. Show me what you mean. Doyen pulled out his personal datapad. He had brought some files with him, hoping he might get a chance to share them. He scrolled through until he found something appropriate. A poem by an ancient human writer about seeing something beautiful for the first time and being changed by it. He read it aloud, translating as he went to make sure the meaning was clear. When he finished, he looked up at Liven. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes were thoughtful. The writer was changed by what they saw, she said slowly. Not physically, but internally. Yes, beauty has power. It can transform us. Is that why you said what you said in the reception hall? You felt transformed? Doyen felt his face grow warm. Something like that, yes. And you had no choice but to express it? I could have stayed silent. But it felt wrong to hide something so strong. Liven stood and walked to one of the bookshelves. She pulled out a data crystal and held it up to the light. This is from our ancient archives. Poetry written by my ancestors 3,000 years ago. She placed the crystal in a reader and words appeared in the air, glowing softly. Listen. She read in her own language, her voice melodic and strange. Doyen didn't understand the words, but he could hear the emotion in them. Longing, sadness, hope. When she finished, she looked at him. It's about someone watching their beloved leave on a journey and wondering if they would return. It was considered one of the greatest works of our ancient civilization. Liven's voice was soft. We don't write things like this anymore. We haven't for hundreds of years. Why not? Because we decided such feelings were distractions, that they weakened us. She put the crystal back on the shelf carefully. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I read these old words and wonder what it would be like to feel something so strongly. Doyen stood and walked closer to her. You do feel things. I can see it. Can you? She looked at him with something like challenge in her eyes. Or are you assuming? Both, maybe. But I think you're more emotional than you let yourself believe. You just hide it very well. I have to. I am the crown princess. Even when you're alone? Liven didn't answer. Instead, she turned back to the shelves. Tell me more about humanity. Not the formal diplomatic information. The real things. What do humans value most? Over the next hour, Doyen talked. He told her about human families and friendships, about how humans celebrated joy and supported each other through grief, about art and music and all the ways humans tried to express the things they felt. Liven listened intently, occasionally asking questions. You mentioned music, she said at one point. Do you have examples? Doyen pulled up some files on his datapad. He played her different types of human music. Sad songs and happy songs and angry songs. Liven sat very still, listening to each one with complete focus. When a particularly emotional piece finished, Doyen saw something that shocked him. There was moisture in Liven's eyes. Not quite tears, but close. Are you all right? He asked gently. Liven touched her face, seeming surprised by her own reaction. This doesn't happen to me. I don't cry. Music can do that. It reaches past our defenses somehow. I should not have defenses that need to be reached past, Liven said, but she didn't sound as certain as before. They met like this every day for the next 2 weeks, sometimes in the library, sometimes in other quiet parts of the palace ship, always alone except for Commander Sylph standing guard at a discreet distance. Doyen showed Liven human art and culture. Liven showed Doyen ancient Veltheran works that had been hidden away for centuries. Slowly, carefully, they began to know each other. Doyen learned that Liven had been trained since childhood to be emotionless and perfect. That she had never been allowed to have friends, only advisors and servants. That she had spent her entire life learning to be a leader, never a person. Liven learned that Doyen had chosen to be a diplomat because he believed in connecting people. That he had a sister who worried about him constantly. That he sometimes felt overwhelmed by the weight of his responsibilities but kept going because he believed in the cause. You carry your burden differently than I carry mine, Liven said one day. They were sitting in the library again, surrounded by books and the soft glow of stars through the windows. How so? You seem to accept that it's heavy. You don't hide the weight. You just carry it anyway. And you? I pretend it isn't heavy at all. I pretend I don't feel it. She looked at him. I wonder if your way is better. I don't know if either way is better. They're just different. Liven smiled slightly. It was becoming easier for her to smile now, though she still did it rarely. You are very diplomatic for someone who caused such chaos by being too honest. Doyen laughed. I contain multitudes. Is that human poetry? Yes, actually. A very old human writer said that. He meant that people are complex. We can be many things at once. I would like to be many things, Liven said quietly, instead of just one thing, just the crown princess. You already are many things, Doyen said. You're intelligent and curious and brave enough to question your own culture. That's a lot. Liven looked at him for a long moment. When you said I was lovely that first day, did you mean it? Doyen's heart beat faster. Yes, I meant it. Even though you barely knew me? Sometimes you can see something true about someone right away, before you know all the details. And what did you see when you looked at me? Doyen took a breath. I saw someone extraordinary trying very hard to be ordinary. Someone with depth and complexity who was forced to pretend to be simple. Someone I wanted to know better. Liven's eyes were bright. For a moment, Doyen thought she might cry again. But instead, she stood up quickly. I should go. This meeting has lasted too long already. Liven, wait, but she... The summons came suddenly and without warning. Doyen was in his cabin aboard the Horizon's Promise, reviewing notes from his latest meeting with Liven, when Minji's voice came through the communication system. Doyen, we have an urgent message from the Veltharan Palace ship. Ambassador Kreith is requesting your immediate presence in the throne room. Doyen's stomach tightened. In all his weeks of meetings with Liven, they had stayed away from official spaces and formal occasions. The throne room meant something important and probably bad. Did he say why? No, just that it's urgent and involves the alliance negotiations. Jiho appeared in Doyen's doorway. I'm coming with you. They might not allow it. Then they can arrest both of us. They took the shuttle to the palace ship together. This time, the landing bay was full of activity. Veltharan officials moved with purpose, and there was a tension in the air that Doyen hadn't felt before. Something had changed. Ambassador Kreith himself met them at the bay entrance. His face was cold with satisfaction. Diplomat Doyen, thank you for coming so promptly. Follow me. What is this about, Ambassador? You will see soon enough. They walked through the corridors, gathering stares from every Veltharan they passed. Word had clearly spread that something significant was happening. Jiho stayed close to Doyen, his hand never far from his weapon. The throne room was even more impressive than the reception hall. The ceiling seemed to stretch into infinity, and pillars of light formed walls that shifted and glowed. At the far end, raised on a platform, sat the Empress of the Veltharan Empire. Doyen had never met the Empress before. She was older than Princess Liven, but carried herself with the same grace. Her robes were pure white, and her expression was unreadable. Princess Liven stood beside the throne, her face carefully blank. She didn't look at Doyen as he entered. The room was filled with Veltharan nobles and council members. They lined the walls on both sides, all watching Doyen with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Ambassador Kreith led Doyen to the center of the room and then stepped back, leaving him alone in front of the throne. Diplomat Doyen of Earth, the Empress said. Her voice was powerful and clear. You stand before the Veltharan High Council to answer charges brought against you by Ambassador Kreith. Charges? Doyen's mind raced. What charges? Ambassador Kreith stepped forward. Your Majesty, honored council members, I bring these charges on behalf of our people and our culture. This human has shown himself to be exactly what we feared. He is primitive, emotional, and uncontrolled. Worse, he has been corrupting the crown princess with his barbaric ideas. Murmurs ran through the assembled nobles. Doyen forced himself to stay calm. I haven't corrupted anyone. Princess Liven and I have been engaged in cultural exchange, as was agreed upon. You have been filling her head with nonsense about emotions and feelings, Kreith said sharply. You have encouraged her to question thousands of years of Veltharan civilization. You have taught her to value chaos over order, impulse over reason. I have taught her nothing. We have shared our perspectives with each other. That's what cultural exchange means. You have taught her to be weak. Kreeth's voice rose with passion. It was the most emotion Doyen had ever seen from a Veltheran other than Levin. I have heard the reports from Commander Sylph. The princess reads your human poetry. She listens to your chaotic music. She has been seen crying, actually crying, because of the things you have shown her. More murmurs. Several nobles looked shocked. One called out, "Is this true, Your Highness?" Princess Liven finally looked at Doyen. Her expression was anguished. Yes, it is true, you see," Kreeth said triumphantly. "The princess has been compromised. Her judgment has been clouded by emotional manipulation. Therefore, I invoke the ancient test of truth." The room went completely silent. Even the Empress looked surprised. "Ambassador Kreeth," the Empress said slowly, "the test of truth has not been invoked in 300 years. Are you certain?" "I am completely certain, Your Majesty. The future of our empire may depend on it." The Empress looked at Doyen. "Do you know what the test of truth entails, human?" "No, Your Majesty." "It is an ancient tradition," the Empress explained. "When there is disagreement about a fundamental truth, one party may challenge the other to prove their position before the council and the royal family. You would have to stand here and convince us that human emotional expression is valuable, rather than barbaric. If you succeed, the alliance proceeds. If you fail, humanity will be forbidden from entering Veltheran space for the next 100 years. Doyen felt the weight of those words settle on him like a physical burden. 100 years. That was longer than a human lifetime. It would doom the outer colonies. Millions would suffer. And if I refuse the test, then you admit defeat by default and the result is the same. Jiho grabbed Doyen's arm. This is insane. You're not a philosopher or a scholar. You can't be expected to defend all of human culture in one speech. I don't have a choice, Doyen said quietly. You always have a choice. Not if I want to save those people. Jiho's grip tightened. You could die trying to do the impossible. Then I die trying. Doyen turned back to the Empress. I accept the challenge. Ambassador Kreeth smiled coldly. The test will take place in 3 days. That should give you time to prepare whatever arguments you think might help you, though I assure you it will not be enough. We will see, Doyen said with more confidence than he felt. The Empress stood. This council is adjourned. The test of truth will be held in this chamber in 3 days' time. All nobles and council members are required to attend. She looked at Princess Liven. Including you, daughter? Yes, mother, Liven said softly. As the crowd began to disperse, Doyen tried to catch Liven's eye, but she turned away, following her mother from the throne room. She didn't look back. Commander Sylph appeared beside Doyen. I will escort you to a private chamber. The princess wishes to speak with you. Jiho looked suspicious. Why didn't she just speak to him here? Because she does not wish to be seen talking to him right now. It would make things worse. Commander Sylph's expression softened slightly. Come, quickly. They followed her through a maze of corridors to a small room Doyen had never seen before. It was plain and simple, with just a table and a few chairs. Liven stood by the window, her back to them. Leave us, she said to Commander Sylph. Your Highness, leave us. I will be safe. Commander Sylph hesitated, then bowed and left. Jiho followed her reluctantly, leaving Doyen alone with Liven. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Liven turned around and Doyen saw that she was crying, actually crying with tears running down her face. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice breaking. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. I should have hidden my feelings better. This isn't your fault, Doyen said, moving toward her. Kreeth was looking for an excuse. He would have found one eventually, but I gave it to him. I let myself feel things. I let myself care about your poetry and your music, and... She stopped, wiping at her tears. About you. Doyen's heart ached. Liven, don't, she said, holding up a hand. Don't make this harder. In 3 days you will stand before the council and try to defend something that cannot be defended. They have already decided. Kreeth has already won. You don't know that. I do know it. I know these people. I know how they think. They will never accept that emotions are valuable, never. She looked at him with desperate eyes. You need to leave. Take your ship and go now before the test. It's your only chance. If I leave, the alliance is over anyway. But you'll be alive. You'll be free. You can go home and find someone who... She stopped again, fresh tears falling. Someone who isn't trapped in a gilded cage. Doyen closed the distance between them and gently took her hands. I'm not leaving, and I'm going to do everything I can to pass this test. Why? For the Alliance? For you, Doyen said honestly. Because you deserve to live in a world where you can feel things. Where you can cry when you're sad and laugh when you're happy. Where you can read poetry and listen to music and not be ashamed of it. Liven looked up at him. Even if it means risking everything? Especially then. She studied his face for a long moment. Then she reached up and placed her hand against his cheek. It was the first time she had ever touched him intentionally. You are either the bravest person I have ever met, she whispered, or the most foolish. Maybe both. She smiled through her tears. Definitely both. Then she did something that shocked both of them. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was brief and gentle and desperate all at once. When she pulled back, she was shaking. I shouldn't have done that, she said. I'm glad you did. If anyone finds out, they won't. I promise. Liven stepped back, wiping her tears again. She straightened her robes and composed her face into the neutral mask she wore in public. The transformation was remarkable and sad. I have something for you, she said, pulling a small data crystal from her robes. It contains something that might help you in the test. My mother gave it to me years ago, but I never understood its importance until now. What is it? Ancient Veltheran texts. From before we decided emotions were weakness. Read them carefully. She pressed the crystal into his hand. And Doyen? Whatever happens in 3 days, know that you changed me. The 3 days passed too quickly. Doyen barely slept. He spent every waking hour studying the data crystal Liven had given him, working with Hana to understand the ancient Veltaran texts. What they found was remarkable. The ancient Veltherans had been passionate and emotional. Their greatest achievements in art, science, and exploration had come during periods of intense feeling. But about 2,000 years ago, a series of wars had torn their empire apart. Leaders had made decisions based on anger and fear, and millions had died. In response, the Veltherans had decided that emotions were the enemy. They had systematically taught themselves to suppress all feelings, believing this would prevent future conflicts. It had worked in some ways. They had achieved peace and stability, but they had also lost something vital. Look at this, Hana said on the second night, pointing to a passage in one of the texts. This Veltheran philosopher wrote that they had chosen safety over truth, calm over joy, peace over purpose. He was arguing against the suppression of emotion. He said they were becoming less alive, not more civilized. What happened to him? He disappeared from the historical record. Probably silenced. Doyen rubbed his tired eyes. So I need to convince them that they made the wrong choice 2,000 years ago. That should be easy. You need to show them that emotions aren't the enemy. That feeling things doesn't automatically lead to chaos and war. Hana looked at him seriously.
Can you do that?
I don't know. But I have to try. On the morning of the test, Doyen put on his diplomatic uniform and looked at himself in the mirror. He looked tired and nervous. Good. That was honest, at least. Jiho appeared in his doorway. The shuttle is ready. Are you? No, but let's go anyway. The throne room was packed when they arrived. Every noble in the Veltheran court was present, along with what seemed like half the palace staff. They lined the walls and filled the balconies, all watching in silence as Doyen walked to the center of the room. The Empress sat on her throne, looking severe and regal. Princess Liven stood beside her, her face showing nothing. But when her eyes met Doyen's for a brief moment, he saw fear there. She thought he was going to fail. Maybe she was right. Ambassador Kreeth stood to one side, looking confident and satisfied. He had spent 2,000 years of history on his side. All Doyen had was the truth. Diplomat Doyen, the Empress said, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. You stand before this council to prove that human emotional expression is valuable, rather than primitive. You may speak. Doyen took a deep breath. This was it. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Your Majesty, honored council members, I want to start by acknowledging something important. I am not here to tell you that your culture is wrong. I am not qualified to judge thousands of years of Veltheran civilization. I am just one human, trying to explain why we value something you have chosen to set aside. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The room was completely silent. Humans have fought terrible wars. We have made awful decisions based on fear and anger. We know what unchecked emotion can do. We have seen civilizations destroyed by hatred and entire peoples erased by rage. Doyen looked around the room, meeting eyes. So I understand why you made the choice you did. I understand why you decided that controlling emotions was the path to peace. Ambassador Kreeth frowned slightly. This wasn't the defense he had expected. But here is what we learned that perhaps you have not, Doyen continued. Emotions are not the problem. It's what we do with them that matters. Fear can paralyze us, or it can motivate us to prepare. Anger can destroy us, or it can fuel us to fight injustice. Love can make us vulnerable, or it can give us strength we never knew we had. He pulled out the data crystal Liven had given him. Princess Liven shared something with me. Ancient Veltharan texts that speak about emotion as a tool, not a weakness. One of your own philosophers wrote that a civilization that fears feeling is already dead in the ways that matter most. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Several nobles looked uncomfortable. Your ancestors understood something you have forgotten. They knew that the greatest achievements come not from cold calculation, but from passion, from caring deeply about something, from feeling so strongly that you are willing to risk everything. Doyen turned to look directly at the Empress. Your Majesty, you have built an empire that is safe and stable and peaceful. That is an extraordinary achievement. But I have to ask, at what cost? When was the last time a Veltharan wrote poetry that moved hearts? When was the last time someone created art that made people weep with its beauty? When was the last time someone stood up and said, I love this, I believe in this, I will fight for this, and meant it with every fiber of their being? The Empress's expression was unreadable, but she was listening intently. I am not saying you need to return to chaos, Doyen said. I am saying you need to remember balance. You have mastered reason and logic. Now allow yourself to feel things again, not instead of thinking, but alongside it. Let emotion and reason work together, the way they were meant to. Ambassador Kreeth stepped forward. This is exactly the dangerous thinking I warned about. He wants us to abandon our principles and return to the chaos of our past. No, Doyen said firmly. I want you to move forward into something new. A civilization that has both the wisdom you have gained and the passion you have lost. And what makes you think we have lost anything? Kreeth demanded. Doyen looked at Princess Liven. She was staring at him, and there were tears on her face. She wasn't even trying to hide them anymore. Because your crown princess is crying right now, Doyen said softly. And half of this room is looking at her like she's doing something shameful. She's feeling something real and honest and human, and you are all judging her for it. The room went completely silent. Every eye turned to Princess Liven. She stood tall, not wiping away her tears, not hiding her face. She just let them fall. That is what you have lost, Doyen continued, his voice rising with passion. The ability to witness genuine emotion and recognize it as beautiful rather than weak. Princess Liven has shown more courage in these few weeks than most beings show in a lifetime. She has questioned everything she was taught. She has allowed herself to feel joy and sadness and wonder. She has opened her heart to new possibilities. He turned back to the Empress. Is that corruption? Or is that growth? Is that weakness? Or is that the bravest thing a person can do? She is the crown princess, Kreeth said coldly. She must be above such things. Why? Doyen challenged. Why must leaders be emotionless? Some of humanity's greatest leaders were passionate people who cared deeply about their causes. They inspired others not through cold logic but through genuine feeling. They made people believe in something worth fighting for. He looked around the room at all the noble Veltharans watching him. I made a mistake when I first arrived here. I said something inappropriate by your standards. I told Princess Liven she was lovely and I couldn't speak. It violated your rules about emotional expression and commenting on appearance. It was barbaric, Kreeth interjected. It was honest, Doyen said. And yes, maybe it was inappropriate. Maybe I should have been more controlled. But it was also true. I looked at Princess Liven, and I was genuinely moved by her presence. Not just by how she looked, but by the intelligence in her eyes, the strength in her bearing, the depth I could sense in her. All of it together made me feel something powerful. He took a breath, knowing he was about to cross a line he couldn't uncross. In the weeks since then, I have come to know her better, and what I feel now is even stronger. I admire her mind. I respect her courage. I am inspired by her willingness to question and grow. And yes, I love her. Gasps echoed through the throne room. Even the Empress looked shocked. Princess Liven's eyes went wide. That is the truth, Doyen said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. I love Princess Levin, not because I'm primitive or uncontrolled, but because I have seen who she truly is, and she is extraordinary. Tell me, Ambassador Kreeth, is that barbaric? Or is that human? Kreeth looked furious. You presume too much? You dare to speak of love for the crown princess as if it were something noble rather than an insult. It is the most noble thing I can offer, Doyen said. My honest feelings. My genuine self. Everything I am, given freely. He turned to look at the entire assembled court. That is what humans offer to the galaxy. Not superior technology or ancient wisdom or perfect control. We offer authenticity. We offer connection through shared feeling. We offer the courage to be vulnerable and the strength to care deeply. And if that caring leads to pain? The Empress asked suddenly. What then? Then we feel the pain, Doyen said simply. And we survive it. And we become stronger for having felt it. Your Majesty, you have avoided pain by avoiding feeling. But you have also missed joy. You have missed wonder. You have missed love. The Empress stood slowly. The entire room fell silent again. You speak well, human, she said. You make compelling arguments. But words are easy. What proof do you offer that your way is truly better? Doyen met her eyes. Look at your daughter. Everyone turned to Princess Levin again. She was still crying, but she was also smiling. A real smile, full of genuine emotion. For weeks you have all watched her change, Doyen said. You have seen her be. The throne room was so quiet that Doyen could hear his own heartbeat. The Empress stood tall, looking out over the assembled nobles and council members. Her expression was thoughtful and calm. I have lived for many years, she said finally. I have ruled this empire through peace and prosperity. I have maintained the traditions of our people and upheld the values we have cherished for thousands of years. And I believed, truly believed, that we had found the right path. She paused, and Doyen felt hope and fear warring in his chest. But watching my daughter these past weeks has taught me something. She has not become weaker. She has not lost her ability to lead or think clearly. If anything, she has become stronger, more whole, more present. The Empress looked at Princess Levin with something that might have been pride. She has become someone who can feel deeply and still maintain control. Someone who can cry and still make difficult decisions. Someone who is both wise and passionate. Ambassador Kreeth stepped forward urgently. Your Majesty, with respect, emotions cloud judgment. They always have. No, Ambassador, the Empress said quietly. Fear of emotions clouds judgment. Suppressing what we feel doesn't make those feelings disappear. It just means we don't acknowledge them. We don't understand them. We don't learn to work with them. She turned her gaze to Doyen. This human has shown us something we forgot. Our ancestors knew it once. They understood that feeling and thinking are not enemies. They are partners. We need both to be truly alive. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some nobles looked thoughtful. Others looked uncomfortable or even angry. But they were all listening. The test of truth has been passed, the Empress declared. Diplomat Doyen has proven that emotional expression is not barbaric. It is human. And perhaps it is something we Veltharans need to remember how to be. Doyen felt his knees go weak with relief. He had done it. Somehow, impossibly, he had done it. The alliance between humanity and the Veltharan Empire will proceed, the Empress continued. But with new terms. This will not be merely a trade agreement. It will be a cultural exchange. Humans will teach us to feel again, and we will teach humans to think more deeply. Together we will create something neither species could achieve alone. Princess Levin was crying openly now, but she was also smiling. She looked at Doyen, and in that moment everything they felt for each other was visible to everyone in the room. Furthermore, the Empress said, I am assigning Princess Levin as our primary ambassador to Earth. She will spend the next year living among humans, learning their ways and helping to build bridges between our peoples. Levin's eyes went wide with surprise. Mother, you have shown me that you are ready for this responsibility. More than ready. You understand both peoples now. You can help us find a path forward together. Ambassador Kreeth looked like he wanted to protest, but one glance from the Empress silenced him. He bowed stiffly and stepped back, his face tight with suppressed anger. This council is adjourned, the Empress said. We have much work ahead of us. The nobles began filing out, their voices rising in discussion and debate. Some looked pleased. Others looked worried. But they were all talking, all engaged in a way Doyen hadn't seen before. He had sparked something for better or worse. Hana and Jiho rushed forward to embrace him. "You did it," Hana said, laughing with relief. "I can't believe you actually did it." "Neither can I," Doyen admitted, still feeling shaky. Princess Liven approached, Commander Sylph following at a discreet distance. Up close, Doyen could see that she was trembling slightly. "That was the bravest thing I have ever witnessed," she said softly. Her voice was thick with emotion. "You risked everything. For me. For us. For people you don't even know." "It was worth it," Doyen said simply. Liven reached out and took his hand, right there in front of everyone who remained in the throne room. It was a small gesture, but for her it was revolutionary. "You told the entire court that you loved me." "I did. Was that wrong?" "It was terrifying and wonderful and completely inappropriate." She smiled through her tears. "It was perfect." Hana cleared her throat gently. "We should probably give you two some privacy." "No," Liven said, still holding Doyen's hand. "Stay, you are his family. You should hear this too." She took a deep breath. "I love you, Doyen. I think I have loved you since that first day when you said I was lovely and couldn't speak. No one had ever been so honest with me. No one had ever seen me as just a person instead of a crown princess. You're both," Doyen said. "You're a crown princess and a person. You don't have to choose, I know that now." "You taught me that," Commander Sylph stepped forward. "Your Highness, the Empress wishes to speak with you privately." Liven nodded but didn't let go of Doyen's hand immediately. "I will see you tomorrow?" "Every day," Doyen promised. "For as long as you want." "Forever might not be long enough," she said quietly. Then she squeezed his hand once and left, following Commander Sylph from the throne room. Jiho watched her go and then looked at Doyen with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. "You realize you just fell in love with an alien princess and somehow made it work, right? That's not normal even for diplomats." "Nothing about this mission has been normal," Doyen said, but he was smiling. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. The alliance was formalized with grand ceremonies and official documents. Trade routes were established. Cultural exchange programs were set up. And through it all, Doyen and Liven worked side by side, building bridges between their peoples. Slowly, carefully, the Veltharans began to change. It started small. A few nobles began reading the ancient poetry that had been locked away for centuries. Some started listening to music again. First Veltharan compositions from long ago, then human music as well. Young Veltharans especially embraced the idea that feeling things wasn't shameful. There was resistance, of course. Ambassador Kreeth and his supporters fought against every change. They wrote protests and gave speeches about the dangers of abandoning tradition. But even they couldn't stop the movement that had begun. The Veltharans had been reminded of something they had forgotten, and now that they remembered, there was no going back. 6 months after the test of truth, Princess Liven prepared to leave for Earth. She would spend a year there, living among humans and continuing to learn. The day before her departure, she and Doyen walked through the palace gardens together. The gardens were beautiful, full of plants from dozens of worlds. But they were also very orderly, with every flower precisely placed and every path perfectly straight. It was lovely but somehow lifeless. "When I return," Liven said, looking around, "I want to redesign these gardens, make them a little wild, a little unpredictable. Your people might not like that. Some will complain. Others will love it. That's the nature of change." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Doyen, I need to ask you something important. Anything. Come with me to Earth, not as my guard or my advisor, as my partner, as someone who stands beside me as an equal." Doyen's heart swelled. "Are you sure?" "That would be a significant statement. I am completely sure. I want the galaxy to see that a Veltharan princess and a human diplomat can build something together. That our species can not only coexist but genuinely care for each other." "Then yes," Doyen said, pulling her close. 1,000 times yes." They stood together in the too-perfect garden, holding each other, and Doyen thought about how far they had come, from that moment of shocking honesty in the reception hall to this moment of quiet certainty. It hadn't been easy. It had been complicated and difficult and sometimes painful, but it had been real. 1 year later, Doyen and Liven stood on Earth together. They were in a simple park in the city where Doyen had grown up. Trees swayed in the wind and children played nearby, their laughter carrying on the breeze. It was chaotic and loud and imperfect. It was wonderful. "So this is where you learn to be so honest," Liven said, watching the children play. This is where I learned that life is messy and complicated and beautiful all at once. Livin was quiet for a moment, just taking it all in. Then she turned to him with tears in her eyes. I need to tell you something, and I need to say it the way you taught me, the honest way. I'm listening. That day in the reception hall when you told me I was lovely and you couldn't speak, I was shocked and offended and confused. But I was also something else. She took his hand. I was moved. For the first time in my life, someone saw me and reacted with pure, unfiltered honesty. No calculation, no agenda, just genuine feeling. I remember, Doyen said softly. Now I understand what you meant that day. Standing here with you, looking at this beautiful, chaotic world, feeling everything I feel. She paused, searching for the right words. I'm so happy I cannot speak, Doyen laughed. You just did speak. She smiled, that beautiful smile that came so easily to her now. Then let me say it properly. I love you, Doyen. I love your honesty and your courage and your stubborn refusal to hide what you feel. I love that you saw me, truly saw me, and weren't afraid to say so. I love you too, Doyen said. I always will. They kissed there in the park, surrounded by the sounds of life and laughter. Human children stopped playing to stare at the alien princess and the human diplomat.